A quiet town, a bright young girl, and a disappearance that would shake a community to its core. This is the case of Gretchen Harrington, one of the most shocking and heartbreaking crimes you've never heard of. For over 4 decades, this case remained unsolved. But when the truth finally came out, no one could believe who was responsible. It was a warm summer morning in Broomall, Pennsylvania. The air was still, the streets quiet, just another peaceful day in the neighborhood. 8-year-old Gretchen Harrington stepped out of her front door, her small hands clutching her Bible. She had made this walk to Bible camp countless times before, her footsteps familiar on the sunlit pavement. Birds chirped softly in the distance. A gentle breeze rustled through the trees, and the world around her felt safe, normal. But this time, something was different. She didn't know it yet. No one did. This would be the last time anyone saw Gretchen Harrington alive. Asterisk. It was just another quiet evening. Nothing seemed out of place. Gretchen was last seen wearing a blue and white dress, her Bible tucked under her arm. A neighbor remembers catching a glimpse of her, just for a moment, walking past, her pace steady. But there was something else, a slight hesitation, a glance over her shoulder, as if she felt someone watching. And then, she was gone. No footsteps, no sound, just an empty street, and an eerie silence settling in the air. The phone rang through the silence, piercing the heavy air of worry that had settled in. Gretchen's parents had waited long enough. Something was wrong, terribly wrong. Her mother's hands trembled as she dialed, each ring stretching time, making the dread unbearable. 911, what's your emergency? My daughter never came home. Please, you have to find her. She was supposed to be back hours ago. She wouldn't just disappear. Her voice cracked, desperation leaking into every word. In the dimly lit house, she clutched the receiver, pacing frantically, her breath shaky. Her father stood frozen, staring at the clock as if willing time to rewind, to bring her back. But there was only silence on the other end. Then the dispatcher's steady voice, trying to calm a mother unraveling. Hours bled into days, and with each passing minute, the hope of finding Gretchen grew slimmer. Police officers scoured the woods, their flashlights slicing through the darkness, but the search yielded nothing. Search dogs sniffed the ground, their noses pointing to empty trails. In every corner of town, Gretchen's parents handed out missing posters, their faces stricken with fear and disbelief. Detectives marked locations on the map, their pens drawing lines through places that had already been searched. The entire town, united in their desperation, canvassed every inch. Yet, no matter how many times they combed through the area, no matter how many eyes they had looking, there was still no sign of Gretchen. Weeks passed, and with each one, hope slipped further away. The town, once full of anticipation, grew silent with the weight of uncertainty. Families clung to the fading belief that Gretchen would return. But that belief was shattered when, one day, a chilling discovery was made. In the shadowy depths of the forest, thick fog clung to the trees. A lone detective moved forward, his eyes scanning the ground, his steps deliberate but hesitant. The air was thick with unease. And then he saw it. Gloved hands reached down, lifting something from the earth, something that should never have been found. The object was barely visible, half hidden in the dirt, but the moment it was revealed, everything changed. An officer's hands trembled as he clutched the radio. The words he spoke barely audible, shaking with disbelief. His voice, strained and broken, sent a chill through the air. The quiet of Ridley Creek State Park was shattered on a September morning in 1975. A jogger stumbled upon a discovery that no one could have prepared for. 6 weeks had passed since Gretchen vanished without a trace, leaving a hole in the community and a mystery that seemed unsolvable. Then, amidst the dense woods, human remains were uncovered, an unsettling discovery that shifted the investigation into a darker phase. What was once a missing persons case was now a race against time to uncover the truth behind her disappearance. As the detectives circled the crime scene, every clue became vital, and the journey into the unknown had just begun. The forensic team's findings confirmed the chilling truth that everyone had dreaded. Gretchen hadn't just disappeared. She had been brutally murdered. Her lifeless body, abandoned and left to decay in the unforgiving woods, spoke volumes of the horror she endured in her final moments. The detectives, their faces a mix of sorrow and determination, knew that this wasn't just another case. It was a fight for justice. As they pieced together the grim details, the search for the killer intensified, each new piece of evidence revealing a dark and twisted narrative. The autopsy report brought a grim and harrowing revelation. Blunt force trauma was confirmed as the cause of death, a brutal and merciless act that left no doubt about the violence Gretchen had endured. As the coroner made meticulous notes on the clipboard, the disturbing details began to unfold. Marks of extreme suffering, evidence of a struggle, and signs that she fought fiercely for her life. The brutality of it all sent a shockwave through the investigation, deepening the mystery and fueling the urgency to find the person responsible for this unimaginable cruelty. The brutality of the crime was undeniable, confirming this was no ordinary case. We knew from the start that we were dealing with something far more sinister than just a simple kidnapping. The brutality of the crime, the way Gretchen's body was left behind, it all pointed to something deeply calculated and cold. As we dug deeper, there were too many questions with no answers. Why her? Who could have done this? The more we uncovered, the more we realized this wasn't just a random act of violence. It was personal, and with every step, we were faced with even more unsettling possibilities. We had to find the truth, no matter how dark it turned out to be. As the investigation progressed, the focus shifted to unraveling the mystery of Gretchen's killer. Every lead, every piece of evidence, became a key part of the puzzle they needed to solve. The detectives, now laser-focused on the details, pored over the crime scene, examining the whiteboard filled with marked locations, each red dot representing a critical piece of the case. Every shred of evidence, from fingerprints to witness statements, was scrutinized, and with each new discovery, the web of suspicion grew tighter. The question wasn't just who did it, but why, and the deeper they dug, the darker the answers became. As the case gained traction, the pressure from the public and the media became overwhelming. Reporters camped outside the police station, eager for any hint of progress, while frantic questions echoed through the press conference rooms. The once quiet town was now under a harsh spotlight, and the community, gripped by fear and uncertainty, demanded answers. Gretchen's tragic and senseless death had shaken everyone to their core. Her loss was no longer just a case. It was a reminder that danger could strike anywhere, and the feeling of safety they once took for granted had vanished. The town was on edge, and the hunt for the killer became a race against time to restore peace. Each discovery in the dense woods revealed far more than just a simple crime scene. It was a trail, one carefully laid out by a cold, calculated killer. As the detectives examined the evidence bags, each piece told a story, each photo on the bulletin board connected to the next, forming a clearer picture. The clues weren't just scattered by chance. They were deliberately placed, like pieces of a puzzle that only the killer could have arranged. With every new detail, the detectives began to understand that this was no random act of violence. It was methodical, a sign of someone who knew exactly what they were doing, and someone they would need to catch before it was too late. In the eerie stillness following the grim discovery, the detectives were left with a haunting silence. The weight of the case pressed heavily upon them as they braced for the dark path that lay ahead. The truth, they knew, was buried somewhere in the shadows of the forest, and the search for it would demand everything. With each step taken, they felt the heavy burden of the unknown, the constant pressure to unravel a twisted mystery that seemed to grow darker with every passing moment. The hunt for the killer wasn't just an investigation. It was a battle against time, and the only certainty was that the truth would not come easily. As the investigation deepened, the detectives turned their focus to those who had been closest to Gretchen: family, friends, even her teachers. In a town where everyone knew each other, no one was beyond suspicion. The faces of the suspects, familiar yet unsettling, were examined closely. Some appeared nervous, their eyes darting uneasily, while others wore a distant, almost unreadable expression. A few were captured in their natural settings, laughing with friends or walking down familiar streets, but the camera lingered on their faces, revealing unsettling stares. In a place where secrets were hard to keep, every glance, every subtle gesture, became a potential clue, and everyone, no matter how innocent they seemed, was now a part of the mystery. We interviewed several people of interest, each one offering fragments of information, each seemingly holding a piece of the puzzle. Yet, despite their answers, the truth remained just out of reach. In the interrogation room, the tension was palpable. One suspect's trembling hands betrayed their unease, while another sat motionless, staring blankly at the table, avoiding eye contact. The detectives, unmoved, pressed harder, their stern expressions scanning for any inconsistencies in their stories. Nervous glances and beads of sweat marked the unease of those under questioning, but every answer seemed to only raise more questions. With every lead that came up empty, the detectives were faced with the frustrating reality that the path to the truth was still hidden, waiting to be uncovered. For years, the case remained cold, its haunting silence echoing through the halls of the investigation. No new clues emerged, no answers came to light, and the trail that once seemed so promising faded into nothingness. It was as if Gretchen had simply vanished without a trace, leaving behind only questions and a community in mourning. The stark graphic flashed on the screen. Case closed, unsolved. A painful reminder that sometimes, justice remains just out of reach. The detectives, like everyone else, were left to wonder what had happened to the young woman whose disappearance had shaken their town to its core. And in the absence of answers, the mystery endured, lingering in the shadows. But time, as it often does, has a way of revealing what was once hidden. Decade after decade passed, and the case that once consumed everyone faded into the background, leaving only yellowed newspaper clippings and a forgotten file buried in dusty archives. The faces of the old detectives, worn out and disillusioned, reflected the toll of years spent chasing ghosts. The calendar pages turned, years slipping by unnoticed, and with each passing day, the hope of solving the case seemed to slip further away. Yet, just when it seemed the truth might never surface, a new generation of investigators breathed fresh life into the case. Their eyes, filled with determination, began combing through the old evidence with renewed vigor. The mystery was far from over, and though time had dulled the pain, it had not erased the need for answers. Nearly 50 years had passed, the case all but forgotten, when out of the darkness came a revelation that would change everything. In a dimly lit office, the atmosphere heavy with anticipation, an investigator's hand shook as they carefully held up the letter, a confession that had been buried for decades. The camera lingered on the words, as if the truth itself were reluctant to emerge. The faces of the investigators, once tired and worn, now wore expressions of disbelief and shock. The confession was simple, yet its implications were staggering. The truth, hidden for so long, had finally come to light. The silence of years had been broken, and with it, the pieces of a long unsolved mystery began to fall into place. But what was the confession? And who, after all these years, was truly behind Gretchen's disappearance? The answers, once locked away in the shadows, were now on the verge of coming to light. As the confession document slowly faded into view, its words blurred and shrouded in darkness, the tension in the room grew palpable. Each ringing phone call, each unanswered question, seemed to echo louder than the last, marking the gravity of what was unfolding. The investigators, their faces a mix of disbelief and determination, knew that this moment would change everything. The answers they had spent decades chasing were within their grasp. Yet as they read, they realized the truth was far darker and more complex than they ever imagined. The revelation that was about to unfold would shatter everything they thought they knew. After decades of silence, the truth, long buried beneath layers of time, finally emerged. And when it did, it sent shockwaves through everyone who thought they knew the story. The investigation, which had once seemed doomed to remain unsolved, had taken a new turn. As the calendar flipped to 2023, marking the present day, The cameras panned over modern-day newsrooms buzzing with activity. Detectives, now determined and resolute, sifted through old case files. Pages yellowed with age, yet still holding the key to a mystery that had haunted a town for far too long. And then, in the midst of the dusty files, something new was uncovered. New evidence that would forever change the course of the case. The person behind Gretchen's disappearance, the one who had eluded justice for so long, was someone no one had ever suspected. The revelation would rewrite everything. The revelation sent shockwaves through the community. The very man who had once stood at the pulpit, guiding his flock, was now the center of the investigation. The mugshot of the suspect, a man who once seemed a pillar of the town, filled the screen. As the camera slowly zoomed in on his weathered face, the years of hidden guilt seemed to weigh him down, his cold expression revealing nothing but the horrors he had concealed for so long. The harsh lighting cast long shadows across his face, symbolizing the darkness that had been lurking in the background all these years. The truth was unfathomable. Gretchen's own pastor, a trusted figure in the community, had been arrested and charged with her murder. The very person who had once offered comfort and solace was now the monster they had all unknowingly welcomed into their lives. The news spread like wildfire, igniting shock and disbelief across the town. The headline, bold and unforgiving, flashed across the screen. Pastor confesses to 1975 cold case murder. The camera lingered on the words, their weight sinking in as the story unfolded. As the image of the pastor's face appeared on the front page, it became impossible to reconcile the man in the photo with the image of the trusted spiritual leader who had once guided the community with kindness. The revelation was devastating. The man they had all turned to in moments of grief, the one who had stood at the altar and offered words of comfort, was now the prime suspect in a decades-old murder. His past, once polished and revered, was now stained with a dark, terrifying secret, one that had festered in the shadows, only to be brought to light in the most unimaginable way. He admitted to picking her up that day, the day everything changed for Gretchen. The confession that followed sent chills down the spine of every investigator in the room. The camera zoomed in on the detective, his eyes filled with intensity as he recounted the chilling details. Flashbacks of the pastor's arrest flickered across the screen, the cold metal of handcuffs clicking shut, his face betraying no emotion as he was led through the police station doors, flashing lights casting an eerie glow on the scene. The gravity of his words echoed through the room, reverberating in the minds of all who heard them. What had once seemed like a tragic disappearance now revealed itself as something far darker. What happened next, after the pastor picked her up that fateful day, was nothing short of horrifying. The details, once locked away in the shadows of his twisted mind, were finally spilling out, shattering the illusion of the man they had all trusted. The details of the confession were chilling. The pastor, a man who had once been a beacon of trust and respect in the community, had concealed the truth for years, expertly hiding in plain sight. His quiet demeanor, his years of service, had all been a carefully crafted facade. The shocking revelation left everyone reeling, questioning how they had never seen the signs. As the confession unraveled, it became clear that Gretchen's death was no accident. It was deliberate, cold, and calculated. The camera shifted to the police officers, who now gathered in hushed tones, their faces grim with disbelief. They meticulously combed through the evidence, maps spread out before them, piecing together a horrific timeline. The weight of the confession hung heavy in the room as the officers exchanged looks. Shocked, disgusted, yet resolute. They knew the truth now, and their mission was clear: to bring justice to the innocent life that had been stolen all those years ago. Nothing could undo the pain, but they were determined to make sure the truth was finally brought into the light. But after years of deceit, justice finally caught up to him. The web of lies and manipulation he had woven for so long began to unravel, piece by piece, until there was no escape. The truth, buried deep within the shadows of his past, had been silenced for too long, but no secret could withstand the relentless pursuit of justice. The camera cut to news footage of the pastor being escorted into court, his face hard and unreadable, flanked by officers as he was led through the sea of reporters and onlookers. The crowd outside murmured in disbelief, unable to comprehend how a man they had once trusted could be capable of such horrors. The scene lingered for a moment longer, the camera slowly pulling away from the court building, its looming presence a reminder that, though time had passed, justice had not forgotten. It was a haunting symbol that, even after all these years, the truth would always find a way to surface, no matter how long it took. Gretchen's family, who had spent decades clinging to hope, finally got the justice they had been waiting for. The courtroom was a place of raw emotion, as the weight of the past was lifted from their shoulders. They had endured years of unanswered questions, a haunting void that could never truly be filled. But in this moment, they had found something that had eluded them for so long: justice. The community, once gripped by uncertainty and fear, could now begin to heal. The small town, which had lived in the shadow of Gretchen's disappearance, could finally start to move forward, knowing the truth had been uncovered. Yet, for all the pain and sorrow, there was a sense of peace. As flowers were gently placed at her memorial site, it was clear that, while Gretchen may be gone, her spirit and her story would never be forgotten. Her legacy lived on, etched into the hearts of those who loved her and those who fought tirelessly for the truth. Her name would forever be a reminder of the strength of justice, even in the darkest of times. Cases like this remind us of the darkness that can exist even in the most trusted places, where the unthinkable can unfold in the shadows, hidden behind the facade of normalcy. But they also serve as a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of perseverance, the relentless pursuit of truth. In the face of fear and uncertainty, there is always a light that guides us through the darkness. The story of Gretchen's life, and the truth that was finally brought to light, is a reminder that justice, no matter how long it takes, will always find a way to prevail. Her memory, her story, and the justice she earned will never fade. Justice for Gretchen, never forgotten. If you found this story compelling and want to hear more about real cases where the truth prevailed, be sure to subscribe for more true crime stories.